Welcome to another episode of Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. In today's episode, I have an interview with Chef James Berry, the founder of Pluck. I'm excited for you to hear the conversation where we are going to be talking about incorporating organ meats into your meals. Before I get into today's content, I have an email to read from Prep Dish subscriber Anne. Anne writes, "Longtime Prep Dish customer here, and I'm loving the new Instacart links. My grocery shopping just went from something I put off to an easy task that I can complete in under 10 minutes. Thank you for continuing to work to help make my life simpler. My family appreciates all that you do, and we are still loving the food." Anne, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm really happy to hear some feedback on these Instacart links. If you haven't heard, our meal plans now have links to pre-filled grocery carts where just in one click, you can have all the items in an online grocery cart to check out and have your Prep Dish ingredients delivered to your door. So if you have not checked that out, or if you've just been wanting to try out our meal plans, reminder that we have a 2-week free trial set up at prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday. So again, that's 14 days of free meal plans at prepdish.com/MPM. Now to our episode with Chef James Berry. Hi, James. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
If you could just start out, I know I give the quick intro, but if you could just start out by telling listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Learned to scramble an egg when I was 7 and fell in love with cooking, but I didn't see it as a career until I was in my 30s. And then I was like, you know what? I always loved cooking as a kid. I got to do this cooking thing. And so I went to culinary school and immediately started working with celebrities. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I had the good fortune of working for a lot of named celebrities. And it was really just the word spread about how I was cooking because I had a real focus on not only what, but how. So I was really, this is in the early 2000s. And even at that time, people were still seeing healthy food as, grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, and like a baked potato. But I took it to a whole other level because I was putting more flavor into health, but I was also doing everything from scratch. So if it had ingredients, I used them, I made them. I didn't buy things that had ingredients, long ingredient list. I bought things that were ingredients.
Give us an example of I don't know, is it like a mole sauce or something else? Like what's something that you would like homemade ketchup?
I did do stuff like that. And when I did them, I would also culture them. So I would add like the way you would make cultured vegetables is, you basically would allow the air outside of them to kind of culture the product. Well, I would do the same thing with ketchups, and I did that with salsas as well. So I was doing a lot of those kind of cultured condiments back in the day. I even conceived of a brand for it, but I was already running a meal delivery service at the time, and I just couldn't pivot to start a food product then. So I let the idea pass, and of course, other people have come up with it since. So, and I even had a bone broth company idea, like way before anyone else was doing it.
But I still can't believe those bone broth companies have taken off. I guess I can, but to me, bone broth is the simplest. It's made out of scraps, and it's the easiest thing to make. But I guess it was a brilliant idea, so you were ahead of your time.
Yeah, the idea I had too back in the day, like truly no one had done, which I had conceived of using the concentrate. So all you had to do was add water.
Yeah.
Because, it's all about trying to take these healthy foods and make them as easy and accessible as possible. So I was always trying to think outside the box in that way. Like, because, condiments really, back in the day, ketchup was not something that was, I think we use it now almost as a sweetener.
Mm-hmm.
But really, back in the day, these condiments were digestive aids. That's what they were designed to do. And to this day, even when you're eating something like barbecue, it's highly recommended you eat cultured vegetables or sauerkraut with it, because a lot of times these foods are carcinogenic because you're burning the outside of it with the sweet sauces or whatever that you're putting on it. And the cultured vegetables or sauerkraut help to offset those carcinogenic effects. So when you eat condiments that are traditional,
Hmm.
in nature, they really do support not only digestibility, but health.
Isn't that funny how that works, right? Like, oh, there's a reason that, tangy
Yeah.
condiment goes with this dish. It's not just out of nowhere.
Yeah, like even like if you look to your point, like culturally, if you look at things like certain curries and peppers that go with those curries or wasabi with Japanese food, these were designed ancestrally or just culturally to support that culture's food. So by having some of these very hot peppers or
Mhm.
hot horseradish or whatever it is in that product or in that food, it was helping to potentially kill off, parasites or
Oh,
anything that might be in the food, particularly like let's talk about Japanese food. It's raw, right? So a lot of raw food has parasites in it and it's okay, you could still eat it, but the
mhm.
culture built in a condiment that would help you and aid you in like killing off any of those parasites and or digesting it well.
Yeah, no, I love that. So great. Well, and then how did you get into all of the organ meats? Tell me a little bit about organ meats.
Yeah, so I learned about it in culinary school. So I learned about it from Weston A. Price. That cookbook really is about traditional foods and they put a big emphasis on organ meat. So I learned about the why then, why they're so nutritious and we call them Mother Nature's multivitamins. They have all the nutrients, all the vitamins, all the minerals that we all need for every biological process in our body. And they have them in higher amounts than the meat, in higher amounts than some of these seeds and these berries and things like that people push as superfoods, but they really do. They have them all, and they're so bioavailable, like they're so easily digested. But I learned it then, but I did not grow up eating these things,
Yeah.
so I didn't actually incorporate much of it in my clients' diets or my own. And it
Mhm.
wasn't really until I had kids that's what changed everything for me because suddenly it wasn't just about me. It was about how do I ensure that my kids
Mhm.
are thriving and eating optimal foods because the reality is I would talk to even these Weston A. Price mothers and fathers and they'd be like, you know, we made a pate the other night and I was the only one that ate it. No one else ate it, and it's like so they would talk to me about their struggles of like, well, we're trying to eat these traditional foods, but not everyone's on board.
Uh-huh.
And that's really where my powers came up is because I was like, well, I know how to help people like eat these foods. I know how to make these foods accessible because I spent my whole career helping people not feel like they are deprived, but that they can follow a specific diet or achieve their desired outcome, but
Uh-huh.
still do it with lots of flavor and
Yep.
function and delicious food. So that was really it was having the kids that really inspired it. And then it was them getting sick. That is what really put it over the edge.
Mhm.
My youngest daughter, they both got Shiga toxin, which can be deadly. It's a form of E. coli, and for elderly people and very young kids, it can be deadly. But you can't hold anything down when you have it. And you can't take antibiotics either. So my oldest, it passed within 3 days. So she was very fortunate. My youngest, though, who was already very thin and bony, she it just wouldn't let up. Like she couldn't eat anything. And it went on for 10 days. And it was right around that 10th day that she finally could hold like some toast. She could finally eat some toast and hold it in. But she was skin and bones by that point, like
Yeah.
truly skin and bones. It was very scary. And I remember watching her because this is whenever find a food that doesn't make you sick, you get addicted to that food. You think suddenly that's your safe food, right? And you won't veer
Mhm.
from that food at all. And
Yeah.
so here I was, this my wife's a functional nutritionist, I'm a chef, and we're watching our kid only eat toast. And it was just like, this is not healthy for her. Like this is not good.
Mhm.
And it went on for a while, and that's when I started thinking, gosh, there was just something I could sprinkle on this toast where it wouldn't make her feel like she's eating anything different, but it would make
Mhm.
us feel better because now she's getting nutrition that she's
Yeah.
not getting from that toast.
And did she eat it?
Well, so at that time, that's where I just
Good.
conceived of it. But I guess I should probably say, so that's where I conceived of the product that I'm now a big believer in and what I created, which is Pluck. So Pluck is my solution for how to get organ meats into people's diets that don't want to eat organ meats. We take freeze-dried and powdered liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas, and we combine them with organic spices and herbs. So we remove the ick taste because we make it taste good. You
Mhm.
don't need to deal with like touching, just foods that might be unfamiliar to you, textures that aren't appealing. You don't have to deal with any of that. And then the big one is you don't need to know how to cook it because you can sprinkle it on anything. And so
Mhm.
suddenly we have this very nutritious food that you can simply salt whatever the person's already eating. So
Mhm.
there's no new habit. And the big one for parents with kids is that, let's just say your kid is only eating popcorn. Well, great. You just put Pluck on the popcorn. Or let's just say they're only eating a very specific food, chicken nuggets or something. Great. Then you can mix it in the sauce that they're dipping in, or you can actually put it in the chicken nugget mix, whatever you want. But now you can meet them where they're at and get them more nutrition. And what's really powerful is that the organ meats have an umami flavor.
Mhm.
And so that umami flavor starts to not only expand and broaden their palate and get them to be more adventurous when they're picky, but also as you give these kids these nutrients that they weren't previously getting, it starts to adjust their palate and their interest in food. And so we get lots of comments from parents where they say, "Oh, my kid is now more adventurous since using Pluck," and
Mhm.
or they see health issues start to go away, like skin stuff or like kind of ADHD kind of stuff start to go away, and they see like, well, now my kid's willing to do XYZ because they're more optimized with their health. So it's
Yeah.
a win-win.
What year was this? How many? I'm trying to.
I came up with this about 6 years ago, and I didn't start the company though till 2020. So I came up with the idea, and then I just kind of like tooled around with it in my kitchen, and we would have dinner parties, and I would just start putting in the food and seeing people's reactions. And it's very fascinating because it's identical to the reactions we still get, which is people tell me the only thing I did differently was I used Pluck in the meal, and that night I got everyone complimenting me on my food, and people wanted more. They wanted seconds. And that's exactly what happened at the dinner parties is people were like, "Oh, this food is so good." And it's simply, well, yeah, this seasoning's good because I designed it for flavor. And
Uh-huh.
I can actually mention why the flavor is different than most seasonings in a second. It's not just the organ meats. But then the other thing is the umami I talked about. Umami is a unique flavor. And so what it does is when you get it, it brightens all the other flavors. So we have salty, sweet, bitter, sour, umami, fifth, and it brightens the food. So it actually will make your food taste better.
Yeah, I think umami's not maybe underrated, but like overlooked. Like I don't think people always think about that. Like you said, they think, oh, I need to add some salt, this and that. But like, oh, getting that umami flavor is like with that culinary background, it's so important and adds just like so much depth to the food.
And so much food does have umami, like meat
Mhm.
has umami, tomatoes, mushrooms, there's lots of foods, but when it's concentrated like it is in like either a mushroom powder or an organ meat powder, it just pops. It literally just makes everything just so incredibly flavorful. But I wanted to share though a big difference between the seasoning
Mhm.
and the seasonings you buy in stores. So what's the first ingredient in most seasoning blends?
Salt.
Yeah. And why is that? Because salt is cheap. So
Exactly.
what you're really getting when you go to a grocery store and you buy a seasoning blend is you're getting salt with some seasonings. And
Mhm.
that's why it's usually very salty.
Mhm.
And yes, salt brings out flavor, but it's also, we have to admit, it also blows out our taste buds. Like a lot of times we have a skewed perspective of taste because we're so blown out by the artificial flavors or by the salt. Well, with our seasoning, salt's like the fourth ingredient, depending on the blend. So it's granulated onions first, and second's the organ meats, and then third is usually the garlic, and then there's salt. So you're really getting, when you get Pluck, you truly are getting a seasoning with some salt. So that's also what adds to the really unparalleled flavor.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah. And I mean, you hit on something, which is one of the reasons I'm always like a proponent of cooking from scratch is anytime you're buying a product, they're not doing what you did, which is prioritizing flavor and health. They're like, okay, they're going to look at food costs first. So I love that you're not going there and you're like, look, salt needs to be in there, but I'm going to have these other ingredients first because that's more important to me. So kudos to you.
And why we can't outsource our health to restaurants and grocery stores is because they all have bottom lines. In a
Exactly.
grocery store, one of the priorities for being in that grocery store is that you have to have shelf life. If you don't have shelf life, you will probably lose more money than you make.
Yeah.
So perishable items that don't have like a way of being reused, they have to sell very quickly, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that usually means they're adding ingredients to those foods to give them shelf life. So sometimes there'll be a product, like even like spices that you'll buy at the grocery store, and you'll be like, wait, why is there dextrose, or why is there this dioxide, or why is this ingredient in here? Because you wouldn't do that when it was at home. It's purely for the shelf life. It's either shelf life, look, it's to keep it a certain color, or it's a flow agent to make sure that it doesn't like get stuck. But
Hmm.
none of those ingredients are things that you need in your diet.
No, I know that's why. So even on our meal plans on the grocery list, we put a little asterisk by anything that has an ingredients panel as a reminder. Flip it over, read the ingredients. I sometimes will not do that. And then and even if I'm online shop and then I'm like, oh, I didn't even think to check the ingredients on this thing, like you just never know where things are going to be snuck in. So it's a good tip.
Totally. And well, and to that sneaking in point, I'd love to share with your audience like how, because look, I love using Pluck because it's easy and delicious. But if you're not ready to make a purchase of Pluck, I'd love to share some ways you can still hide and get organ meats into your dishes.
Yes, I would love to talk about that. Personally, we do use organ meats, but and it's usually more experimentation mode, but I would love to hear your tips and get people on board with it.
Absolutely. So let's just say you're using Prep Dish.
Hmm.
No matter what they give you that week. So they don't have to adjust what they're doing. All you have to do is add. I would recommend the first thing you add is like just get some chicken hearts at the store, and you can find them online, or you can sometimes find them in the frozen aisle of your grocery store. And why I like chicken hearts is because they're incredibly mild
Okay.
and they're small.
Hmm.
So that's a really good place to start because they don't have a strong taste. They actually are more sweet than they are savory.
Hmm.
And so take those and treat them like mushrooms. And if, let's just say, in the Prep Dish meal plan that week, if there's anything like a sauce, whether it's a curry or spaghetti sauce or even ground meat, you can simply like just chop it up really fine, like mince it up. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying to do all of the chicken hearts, just saying just cut up like two.
Yeah.
Like it's all about ratios when you're trying to hide, certain foods and other foods. So if you're doing like a pound of meat, just use two chicken hearts, chop them up really fine, add it. If you're doing a sauce and it's for four people, same thing. Just use about 2 to 3 of those chicken hearts, chop them up. And the smaller you make them, the more they'll integrate into the dish. No one will know.
Yeah.
So chicken hearts is a really great place to start. But one that is, I think, even easier is to just buy a beef liver. Because when you go to buy a beef liver, let's just say you get it from your local farmer's market, it's always going to be frozen.
Hmm.
Okay, it's always frozen. And so what I find is most intimidating with organ meats is when they're defrosted. Once they're defrosted, you have this huge organ and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have to do this. How am I going to eat all of this right now?" Because they go bad pretty fast.
Yeah.
So what I advise is do not unfreeze, like don't let it defrost. Keep it frozen. And so when you get it home, every time you're going to have a Prep Dish meal,
Hmm.
whether, like I said, same thing, whether it's a sauce, whether it's a casserole, any stir fry, you can literally pull out that liver and just use a box cheese grater and just grate it frozen right into the meal. If you're doing a pound of ground meat, once again, don't go too high. Like, so keep it to about a tablespoon at first. And then if you find your family really likes it, maybe go up to 2 tablespoons. But you don't have to go beyond that. They
Hmm.
will start to get that umami of the organ meats and they
Yep.
won't know it's in there. Like if you keep the ratios down, a little goes a long way with organ meats,
Hmm.
particularly in Pluck when it's freeze dried and powdered. So when you have a raw organ, it starts at 100%. When you freeze
Yep.
dried, it goes down to like 21%. So the freeze dried powdered organs in Pluck are extremely, like concentrated. But if you're just using the real organ,
Mm.
that's okay too. Like even though it's not concentrated, the key is just make sure you're using it
Yeah.
every other day or every week. Get it into the diet. Don't just let it stay in the freezer. But those are two tips that really you could add to what I imagine almost any of the prep dish meals.
I
And
love
people,
Yeah. So you have me inspired. I'm going to try this. I might even do a follow-up episode on how it goes. I currently mostly what I do is Force of Nature. Now that brand of meat sells a
yep,
lot that have the organ meats in it. So I do buy that. I think part of it too, I like to keep it in the diet so my kids have a taste for it. And I'd like early
absolutely.
on had them eating liverwurst. I think with kids, like kind of getting it, like starting small, but having them eat it at least some so they have that taste for it. And it's not like kind of sudden and new. So early
Now
enough.
with young kids though, I would definitely advise so think about there's this concept of like supports like. So the idea is that the part of the animal you're eating is supporting that part in you. So when you think about young kids, like liver for adults is probably really good because we're all needing to detox all the toxins in our, we've grown up around. For little kids though, what are they really developing? Well, they're developing brain.
Mm-hmm.
They're also developing bones. So the one thing that I would try to get in a kid's diet, if you're not already, is bone marrow.
Oh.
Bone marrow is so nutritious and it's not hard. Like you just have to buy bones and see if your butcher will do it in what they call canoe cut.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like they cut them long versus the short end and then just put a little salt on it, put it under the broiler for just a little bit.
Yep.
And then what you do is you have that liquid kind of bone marrow, right? And it's kind of looks a little like, I don't know, softish, like little fatty, little pudding kind of like. But
Yes.
that bone marrow could be added to those sauces. It could be mixed in
Mm-hmm.
with the ground meat. And once again, no one will really know because it's sweet. It's not strong. And as long as you're adding it to meat, because it will have a slightly meaty taste.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, no one will know, but they'll benefit. And honestly, with most kids, you don't have to hide bone marrow. They'll once
They'll
they
like that.
once they once they get a taste for it, it's like butter. Like they'll put it on toast. They'll put it you can literally treat it like butter and they'll go crazy for it.
Yeah. Anytime I see bone marrow on a menu, I'm like, okay, we're getting that. Me and my husband are both like, we love bone marrow.
Yep. Now brain is harder to get,
Uh-huh.
but we will have a product soon, very soon,
Okay.
that will have brain in it. And we source from New Zealand, and New Zealand has never, ever had mad cow disease. So there's no concern of prions, I think they're called prions in the brain. So we have no concern about it. But brain is one that, ancestrally people used to eat more of, like particularly if you grew up on a farm, you used to have it with eggs, and it's very got lots of good healthy fat, lots of good stuff in it. And it's something that I really hope parents will embrace and start to get more in their kids. So our product is going to be cinnamon brain. So it's going to have cinnamon in it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for that one. Great. Well, this again has me inspired. I'm feeling like I need to go out and buy some chicken hearts this week. So, and some pluck to sprinkle on. So one, I want to hear how people can find you, but first go over the different flavor options you have and then how people can find you and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we have our liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas blend. That's just our organ meat blend. And we have one that is only the organ meats, which is called Pure. And
Mm-hmm.
that's for people really, that product's kind of cool because the Pure can go sweet or savory. So
Yeah.
you could actually put it in brownies if you're making brownies or cookies. The key is you just use a little bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
1 teaspoon of Pure is equal to 2 ounces of organs. So you could even start with like a half a teaspoon in a smoothie and no one will know.
Nice.
So that one's kind of nice in that sense. But here's something you can also do with it. And this is kind of why we created it because we were very aware like, we're not going to be able to meet everyone's needs with seasonings. Like some people are going to not want this or want that. And we
Mm-hmm.
can't make 50, thousand seasoning blends. So I was very aware of like, hey, if we just give you the organ meat blend that I formulated so that it's for taste, because I formulated it so it's not too strong, it's kind of neutral. You could technically add it to your own seasoning, your own favorite seasoning.
I like
And I
that.
just recommend you just once again, you do it in a ratio. Like you keep it to like a 15% organ meat to about 85% of the seasoning. You can maybe get up to 20%, but I wouldn't go too much higher than that. So that's one thing you can just make pluck on your own. But
Mm-hmm.
the other way you can do it is you can give it to your pets. So pet food is missing these organ meats and pets go crazy for it. They
Mhm.
literally, and a little goes a long way. So if you have a pet that's not really eating their food as
Mhm.
much as you'd like them to, I'm not telling you to change their food. You can keep the kibble, do whatever you want to do, but just sprinkle this over their food and they'll go crazy. And then you can also use pure, just the way we were talking with the liver or the heart. Like you can just put a teaspoon or even half a teaspoon into your sauces or into your dressings and no one will know. You just blend it right in. That's pure. And then we have zesty garlic. We have spicy mild, which we're going to soon be changing the name to Southwest. And then original. And those three are more savory. So those ones are really adding flavor.
Mhm.
You're not really going to want to put those in sweet products, but maybe you'd want the spicy one in some ice cream, maybe, I don't know, or on some watermelon. But for the most part, they're savory blends.
Mhm. Great. And then how can people find you? I know you have a podcast. Are you on social media? And where can they get the
Yeah, so you can find us at eatpluck.com. You can certainly purchase there should you be interested. We also are on Amazon, so just do a search for Oregon seasoning or just Pluck seasoning, and we'll pop up. And then you can check us on social at Eat Pluck, and I'm Chef James Berry. And then we do have a podcast, and Allison is going to be a guest. I can't tell you when because we're so far ahead. I just don't know when it all comes out, but you'll get to hear Allison when she promotes it, talking about her life and her process with prep dish and whatnot. But our podcast is called Everyday Ancestral.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I hope you listeners are just as inspired to go out and try some organ meats as I am. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you to James for coming on today's podcast. If you are interested to try out his seasoning Pluck, I have a link in the show notes. There's also a code Prep Dish. So one word, all caps Prep Dish, and you can get 15% off your order if you're wanting to try that out. And then a reminder that if you want to try out the Prep Dish meal plans, we also have a 14-day free trial set up at prepdish.com/MPM. Thanks again to James for coming on today's show. That's all I have for today. I will be back again next Monday with another episode.